Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow With Us. My name is Evan Barton, and I'm your host who helps create conversations with the innovators and leaders of a growing tech center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Grow With Us podcast highlights the work of community leaders, tech entrepreneurs, nonprofit professionals, and talent development advocates in Tulsa. Grow With Us is a podcast of In Tulsa. In Tulsa's mission is to connect talented individuals and companies to stimulate economic growth in Tulsa and to create more prosperous communities across the region. Each episode, Grow With Us discusses the growth of opportunities, the growth of communities striving for change, or the tech and innovation that is changing the landscape of Tulsa. On this episode of Grow With Us, Evan chats with Miguel Da Corte, Assistant Professor of Spanish at Tulsa Community College, and Chris Chumana, a Student Support Specialist in the Language Lab at Tulsa Community College. Evan, Miguel, and Chris discuss the importance and discipline behind language acquisition, how it can bring a community together, and the different ontological implications of existing in multiple languages. Episode of Grow With Us. I'm really excited today to welcome two awesome guests that I'm so excited to have on here. I've got my professor, Miguel Da Corte, and Chris, who is Chris, I'll let you introduce yourself, of course, but you are an assistant in my language learning journey in the Language Lab, and you serve a lot of other students at the TCC Southeast Campus. So I'm super excited to have you both on here as well. And thanks for being on Grow With Us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love for you both to kind of ping pong back and forth on kind of your story. Yeah, I'd love to see you guys play ping pong next too. But yeah, go ahead and tell our audience, what your story in whatever way you're comfortable.
Well, yes, I am Christopher. I work at the Language Lab. I co-assist Profe in Spanish. We work together, helping them creating material, coming up with new ideas to reach students, help them develop their Spanish-speaking abilities. Been in Tulsa for 7 years already. I'm originally from Ecuador. I moved here shortly after high school. Had a friend living here already, and he was like, "Hey, man, Tulsa's great. Like, I like the city, and I feel like you'll fit right in." Rest the odds. It was the first time I'd ever lived by my own. I've always lived with my family, with my mom, my dad, my brother. So that was my first time coming and living on my own and pretty much in a new city. So coming here to Tulsa was something important for me in my life.
Yeah.
And now it's home.
That's awesome. Welcome home to the home that you've created. So that's awesome. Miguel?
Can I just say the same thing he said?
Oh, yeah.
Can I copy paste? Miguel Da Corte here. I am an assistant professor of Spanish at Tulsa Community College. I have been with the organization for 15 plus years. Being an instructor, part-time faculty member. Prior to that, I was in the academic advising. I was also working with students with disabilities. That's how my career actually started at TCC, and then had the opportunity to support some of our leadership at the college, our assistant vice president of academic affairs, and some of our vice presidents as well. Original from Venezuela, I have been here in Tulsa for 15, 16 years.
That's awesome.
Time has flown by, and I have lost track.
When you're having fun.
Yes. So I have been here for at least 15 years. I moved directly from Venezuela. I didn't finish college there. Decided just to venture out, roll the dice and say, should I do it? Should I stay? Should I stay or should we go? So I just decided to hop on a plane, come here and explore Oklahoma, explore Tulsa, and figure out what opportunities were available for me, and discover that this is a hidden gem with lots of opportunities. I had the opportunity to further my academic career, and also I love this place so much because it gave me the opportunity to do what I love, which is to teach, connect with people, and engage with awesome resources, awesome folks like Chris and you that we have here in Tulsa. All my family's back home. I'm the only one here. Now with my husband, right? We're happily married, and he moved from Iowa to here too, so we now call this place home.
That's awesome. both have a story traveling here, so that's cool. I love that. Well, thank you both for sharing your stories. I think we get lots of different types of stories on this podcast. I think the one that is most common is we get a lot of folks from Tulsa Remote who have like called another place home and then come to Tulsa on a whim or almost sometimes on a dare in a sense, but also like with the dangling carrot of $10,000. And so I think your perspective of like your stories, Tulsa being a part of your stories, not necessarily by any type of, almost by happenstance, but for it to have worked out in so many ways for you to feel confident in your journeys and to feel like Tulsa has really welcomed you, that is kind of the name of the game with this podcast and kind of why I really enjoy hearing the stories of how people come to Tulsa, because it really catches people at different times in their life and from a variety of different backgrounds. So thank you for that. And in addition to kind of your stories, I'd love to hear like what is your relationship like with Tulsa? You know, you've lived and worked here for X amount of years, respectively. How have you seen the city change over time in your respective perspectives?
A lot.
Yeah.
It has changed a lot. Yes, mucho. Demasiado. No, I remember, so coming here to Tulsa, my first year was one of the most challenging ones I've ever faced in my life, coming here to Tulsa. Because, especially in Ecuador, especially the part where I grew up, it's a walking city.
Yeah.
So wherever you go, like wherever you need to go, it's within a walk. And if not, there is like buses that come there every 10 minutes. So like you always have a method of transportation, you have buses every 10 minutes, or you can either just walk to the place. Yeah. It's easy. Here it wasn't, and I did not know that.
I often complain about this, and it's the only thing I know. So I so feel you on this.
Yes, and the first year was so hard. I came here over the winter, and I remember I have this funny story. So I remember that I came here over the winter, right, and I enrolled to TCC, and then I was like, I want to take early classes because in Ecuador we start school like at 6:45. And then I was like, I can do an 8:30 a.m. class at Metro. Mm-hmm. And I live, back in the day, I used to live near Riverside.
Okay.
And I was like, I can take a 8:30 a.m. class in Metro. So I remember that I enrolled to that class. Worst decision of my life because I didn't have a car. So I had to wait for the bus. And back in the day, and that's why I'm saying that the city has improved a lot because now public transportation is way better.
Especially on Riverside.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see like they have a place for you to sit and be away from the shadow.
Yeah.
Back in the day, there was nothing like that. There was just like a bench. And I remember it was me and the bus used to go there every hour, every 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
So I remember for me to get to TCC at 8, I had to wake up at 6-ish, to get ready.
To get to the bus by 7.
Get a bite, and then be there at 7 to get there at 8.
Jeez, that's a commute.
No, the worst part was the winter.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know when the bus was coming or not. Yeah, as I was still new, technology wasn't that up to date back then.
Yeah.
So it was me and the bench alone in the winter, in the snow with all the air. Yeah, one of the worst. And the summer was about the same, but with the heat.
Yeah, exactly. Just flip the extremities.
Yeah. So the city has grown a lot.
Yeah.
The city has grown a lot. I can see the improvement. Like I can see that now there's no little benches anymore, but like they actually create a space for the bus stops. Buses are coming more often now. You can actually they have an app now where you can actually track when the bus is coming to you. So all of that, I just think that makes it way easier for people that are moving in.
Yeah. Well, and I think this could be fake news or I could misremember this, but I think that TCC students get Tulsa Transit for free.
They do.
There we go.
Yes,
okay. I'm glad I knew people that could confirm that.
Even faculty.
Yeah, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's still work to be done. I would say the routes and because this is my experience in 2024. I checked to see, if I wanted to take the bus from my house and I live, it is a 10-minute drive, but it is an hour and 24 minute on the bus. And that
to Southeast Campus?
To like right down here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which is like the trade-off of like waiting for an hour and 24 minutes versus 10 minutes. Like that is literally like money wasted if you want to look at it like that.
Have you considered riding a scooter?
I have a bike and I've considered riding a bike, but that is a lot. And I would come down here and not have access to a shower so that I could sweat because I would sweat. So like that would be a lot, especially like considering the heat we were just talking about. Yeah. What about you, Miguel?
I think that Tulsa has grown a lot, and I think that it has evolved. And that is the best word that I can use to define Tulsa. You know, the Tulsa that I got to know 15 years ago is totally different from the Tulsa that I know now. Back when I first got here, hearing of Venezuelans here in Tulsa was kind of like a foreign concept.
Yeah.
Right now, there is a huge Venezuelan population here in the Tulsa area, not just Venezuelans, but people from Ecuador, Honduras, Mexico. So we have grown, and I think that it's because of Tulsa's openness, I would say, that this is happening. I think that Tulsa has welcomed diverse talent. Tulsa has welcomed diverse ideas, and I think that that is what is propelling Tulsa to something bigger and better, right? So I am extremely proud of the city. This is kind of like the place that I call home. This city reminds me a lot of the city that I was born and grew up in, Venezuela, right? Very, very similar. My hometown is Valencia, Venezuela. So it reminds me a lot. You know, we had an airport 15 minutes to where I used to live. So we have the Tulsa International Airport, which I'm super excited about having the first international flight.
Yes.
Hopefully, knock on wood, next year, right? But we have restaurants. The only difference is we were close to the coast and could go to the beach. That is not possible here.
Landlocked. Lake-locked.
Lake-locked, yeah.
Yes, I guess that you can swim in the Arkansas River if you wanted to, but
soon.
Anyways, but yeah, I love the place, and I have seen its development, and I think that it is a city that continues to grow. I feel like people here are excited with what they have and what they have seen, but they continue to make progress, right? So they haven't said, okay, this is it. This is where we're going to stop. I think that we're super welcoming to immigrants, right? And the place has been welcoming to me, and I can attest that it has been welcoming to other folks too. And I think that Tulsa is too kind of like a bubble within the state of Oklahoma, right? Yeah. So I love it. I have so much respect for the city it is and for the people that live here. And I'm excited to see what the next chapter for Tulsa is going to be.
Yeah, I thank you both for that. I think it's really interesting. My experience in Tulsa starts around like 17 years ago. I was 9 years old when I moved here from Muskogee. And it was like suburb to a big city. Like there was a marked difference in kind of my experience. I actually used to walk to school in Muskogee, but and then when I moved here to Tulsa, I walked from I lived in an apartment complex at like 51st and Harvard, and I would have to walk out the back of the apartment complex across a pedestrian bridge at 9 years old to get to my elementary school. And I did it sometimes because I could, but sometimes I didn't. But as soon as middle school happened, it's like, no, you're not going. You're not doing that anymore. And it's crazy that trend has like gone the rest of my life. As soon as I was at driving age, I was driving everywhere because you can't get anywhere without a car. Conveniently, you can't guarantee safety, but like safety is something that people consider when they're like public transit. It was something that I feel like a lot of people had like that preconceived notion about that it wasn't safe, and that's because you didn't know anybody that rode it because it wasn't accessible. But so yeah, I've only had that experience in Tulsa, which is interesting, and I do think that it's grown. I hope that it keeps growing because things like, TCC students getting access to transit is huge. That's more people riding the bus. That's creating kind of this, I would say, reputation that can be changed, and also hopefully welcome new riders that don't have to upkeep a car because cars are expensive and ridiculous, and
Very expensive.
they break down every other week or whatever. It's really crazy. But kind of back to your point, Miguel, on kind of the community being welcoming to immigrants and everything. I think that I noticed that, and growing up here, I feel like I had access to a diverse group of students. Some of my really close friends growing up were all immigrants from Mexico and had experiences moving somewhere else and then kind of coming to Tulsa after their first initial point in the U.S. And the difference in their experience from where they came from and then in Tulsa is really interesting. I think that they were able to find like a stronger community here in Tulsa. Maybe it's numbers, maybe it's like cultural, I guess like prevalence, or even like just seeing people that looked like you more here. That was an interesting perspective to have amongst my like close friends at a young age. And I really, really enjoyed those friendships. I think they changed and kind of shaped who I am now.
And I think that you said something that really triggered this thought. We come from a collectivistic culture, right? We like to be around people, right? We may be introverts, but we really take seriously the word community, right? And we like to be surrounded by people who may look like us or may not look like us, but they're still part of who we are. So I think that when you move to a new city, I think that desire and that drive to really find your niche and find your people, find your community, I think that that makes a difference.
Absolutely. I'm curious if you've traveled out to Japan before or no?
No, I've been to China before.
Okay.
Japan.
You've been in an East Asian country, which is kind of where this example is coming from. I think that America is not one of the only places, but it's a version of Western culture that has like a heterogeneous society where like many immigrant countries have like a homogenous society in terms of like everyone looks the way that you look in a way, and everyone speaks the same language as you. America is very different. You have to either conform or like change something about the identity you brought with you to be a part of an American society. And I think that only really extends to non-white folks, or sorry. That like expectation is placed on folks that aren't from America, which is this weird like global society like thing that happens where I don't know. It's just frustrating that we want to be in an accepting society and be a global society, but then there are these expectations. There are this like, you have to do this in order to be an American. And like, that's common sentiment of like, you're in America, speak English. And I'm like, not necessarily me. There's so many other people that are like, we don't speak English and we're still Americans. That it doesn't matter that. So I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting point to touch on.
I definitely agree. I think that every people is protective of their own identity and culture. And I think that's where it comes from, you know? Like you see foreigners come and they're like, well, we're in America, we speak English here. But especially here in Tulsa, I've seen, like Miguel said, people are so welcoming here. Like they're open, they like the change. I remember a few years ago, I was talking to the provost at TCC. And we had this meeting for Hispanics, and the provost happened to be there. And I remember the provost telling me, the whole point of TCC and the mission of TCC in this past few years actually is encourage a lot of international students to come here. Like we offer scholarships, we try to, make, as you said, the bus to be free for them. And we do all these accommodations because Tulsa is an international community. And we want to keep on bringing all these international students here and make the city more welcoming for people, as I said, non-white people.
Something important, too, that I think merits some discussion is the fact that I think that there is a generational trait there that there are some waves or some generations that are more protective of their identity, and there are some others that are more willing to let go to find that acceptance, or to be able to fit in, right?
Absolutely.
So I must confess that I have had to let go certain things, right, so that I could be where I am right now. And not that I did anything that was controversial or anything like that, but I think that younger generations, and I see it in my classroom these days, I think that these kids are more protective of who they are, and they do not let society define them or what they need to do to be included or accepted. Right. And when I look back at my grandparents, perhaps, I come from a Portuguese family. That's part of my heritage. They moved from Portugal to Brazil, and then Brazil to Venezuela. And when they moved to Venezuela, they pretty much tried their best to do as Venezuelans did at the time, because they really wanted to, stay there, make a living there, and they did whatever they could to find that acceptance. So I think that as newer generations are up and running, or more generations are out there, I think that the younger ones are the ones, that's a personal thought, they're more protective of who they are. So
us Gen Zers.
Is that what it is?
You don't get to tell me who I am. No, we were just talking about this last night. Like, I'm born in 97, and it's like a cusp of like millennial Gen Z, but I don't understand anything that's on TikTok because they're not on TikTok. But they have these words that like literally I don't understand. But it goes to like the generational thing. It's interesting how small those generational gaps are becoming too. I think like this being in the middle of it's like I have some tendencies that are of the generation that came before me, but also the ones that's coming after me. And then that creates its own like, well, where do I fit type of question. It's really interesting. But speaking about kind of the younger generation, I think that the work that you do at TCC is a really amazing opportunity to kind of see a breadth of community and generational divide, because the students are sometimes non-traditional, but sometimes, the freshest out of high school you can be. But you both work in TCC's World Languages Department. Can you tell our audience about your journeys to TCC and where your professional careers are kind of heading from here?
Perfect. I'll leave it to you.
Okay, you want me to take the lead on this one? Okay, so my career started at TCC as a student, right? So I was majoring in economics back in Venezuela, but when I decided to make the move, I realized that none of my credits would transfer over here, right? I had completed 70 credit hours.
Oh, wow.
Which is the equivalent of 6-7 semesters back home. Back in Venezuela, you need 5 years of school to be able to get a bachelor's degree. So when I realized that none of my credits would transfer, I decided just to start from scratch. I have been a little bit of a nerd. I like books. I like to study. I like to grow academically. And, I wanted to be able to find a decent job, make a good living, right? So I started at TCC as a student and completed my associate's degree there. And after that, I had the opportunity to also find a job as an administrative assistant for the, at the time, Disabled Students Resource Center. Now it's the Accessibility Resources, which provides accommodations for students with disabilities. So I stayed there for a couple of years, then became an advisor within that same department. But then it was time for me to start working on my bachelor's. Right? For me, clock was ticking. Right? So I was not the kiddo fresh out of high school.
No.
I was 21, and there were some expectations on my family side, right? And I wanted to keep the ball rolling, right? So I felt like time was against me. So I decided to go for my bachelor's degree and then left TCC for a few months, but then I felt like something was missing. At that time I realized that TCC had become part of my identity, part of who I am, and I decided to come back and had the opportunity to come back. Again, as an advisor, the same department. And, I finished my bachelor's, then went on for my master's because I really wanted to take my skills to the next level and reach out to a larger student population. And in order for me to do that, I had to go for my master's.
You got a master's, yeah.
Yes, so I did that, and after that, I have been in student affairs, which is the student side of things, for quite a while, and I wanted to explore the academic side of the house, which is where we have all of our academic schools, our degrees, certificates. So I was able to have the opportunity to work with Dr. Greg Stone as his project coordinator, and then later on work with Dr. Angela Sivadon as director of academic projects. So, and then while I was serving as an advisor, and also when I was serving as a director of academic projects, I had also been engaged in the classroom, right? At the time, I was only able to teach part-time. I was teaching evening classes right after my 5 p.m. shift. So, I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to be a full-time faculty member. I loved all the different roles that I have had at TCC, but really being in the classroom, that is what energizes me, right? So one of my students the other day asked me, what is my favorite pastime? And my response was teaching, right? Because it is something that I really enjoy. It is something that gives me energy. So a couple of years ago, it's been 2.5 years now, when the full-time Spanish professor vacancy popped up, and I really enjoy my time with Angela, and it was a tough choice because I really enjoy being a director of academic affairs projects. I'm working with her, but teaching is where my heart is. So I made the decision, and I was successful in that pursuit, and that is what I am doing right now. I often talk to my husband and I say, okay, what's next? Right now I'm in school. I'm getting my PhD. Hopefully next year I will graduate, but this time I'm not in a rush to finish that. But I really want to continue being a faculty member, right? So at TCC, within the faculty role, you have the opportunity to move up in terms of rank, right? We have assistant professors, associate professors, and full professors, and I think that is what I would like to explore in the future. Yeah. Right. I think that I love what I do, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. So in terms of what's next, which was your original question, what's next is continue to grow in my field.
Climbing that ladder, yeah.
In my professional career, learning how to become a better instructor, a better professor, identifying more opportunities for our students, and also giving back to the community.
That's awesome. Well, if I were to give you any direct feedback right now on the spot, you're a fantastic professor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, this is no shade to my previous institution, but I went to an Ivy League college, and you're a better professor than many of the professors I had there. So
thank you, Evan.
Absolutely. And I can tell the passion and the energy is in the classroom. It is...
Not too much energy, right?
The right amount of energy.
Okay, good,
every day.
Good.
And it's so interesting. I'm going to put a pin in some of the things you talked about because I want to hear from Chris as well. But Chris, your turn. Mic's over to you. Actually, the mic's always been at you.
We're still playing ping pong.
Right.
It's in your court.
No, just like Miguel, I also was a student at TCC. It happens to be that I was part of the Hispanic Student Association when I was a student. And through that, I met Roberto Maduro, which is my direct boss. And he was the advisor for the Hispanic Student Association at that time. And I remember we grew a very close friendship because I used to collaborate on events. I used to be part of a team member, right? And I remember that there was this one time where the Spanish tutor was going through some medical problems. And then Roberto had to fill the spot in. And he came to me. He was like, hey, Chris. I was still a student at that time. And then he came and was like, hey, Chris, you're a native speaker. I've seen that you know very well Spanish. Like, not only because it's your native language, but because I've seen that you understand the language pretty well.
No.
Do you want to help me out as a work study? I was like, that sounds like a good idea.
Sometimes you're helpful.
Sometimes. But then it happened that I wasn't hired as a work study. I was hired as an adjunct, as an adjunct tutor, I think. And then I was supposed to just be there until the other tutor came back. And then I did a trial semester, and just like Miguel, I loved it. I loved being in class. I loved teaching. I've actually always loved teaching. My first job per se was as a chess teacher.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so
We should play chess sometime.
Yeah, most definitely. I love the game. But yeah,
I'll watch.
I love teaching, just like Miguel said. Fell in love with it. And then I just sticked enough along with TCC. After the other tutor came back, they just thought it was a good idea to have us both. So, and then at TCC, I've been working with new projects. I do statistics at TCC. We control like inflow of students, try to create new projects.
Awesome.
And now I'm working alongside with Profe. I'm not an adjunct anymore. I'm what's called an academic support specialist.
Cool.
Which has the roles of a tutor, because of course I still tutor students. But I also have the opportunity to now work inside the classroom with Profe. And I know you're doing the interview, but I would love to hear from your side. How does it feel to have both of us in the classroom? Because it's not a traditional 120.
Yeah.
But it's like a 220.
No, absolutely. I think it's been, just for context, I've been in Spanish all semester for any listeners, started in January, and we just finished our final on Tuesday. And what a culminating experience. now getting to interview you guys, so I appreciate you coming on. That's just a little time flow thing. But to answer your question, it is, I think the more language in the class, the better. The more people that understand and can help you redirect your understanding to what is, I guess in language there is what is correct and what isn't correct. But I think you both do a really, really great job of, I guess, the academic version of bedside manner, where I think that there isn't a slapping of the wrist on anything that's wrong, because there is value in even attempting at all. There's value in what's wrong in the language environment, I think, because you're hearing people use words that might not be in the right order or might not be in the right verb tense, but they're trying. And I think that you recognize that effort first, and that is, I think, it gives the student a sense of relief. And I've seen that in my peers in the class, some folks that are shyer than others, some folks that don't say any words until you say, I talked to you outside in the hallway before class, and you said that you wanted me to ask that. That scenario is so good because it's not disarming in any way. It's like, okay, I'm in a class. The professor is gonna incorporate me. You're doing that.
I guess that there are some expectations, right? If you're in a language class.
Exactly.
But I not to steal your thunder here, but Chris, I think that part of the success that we have had in the classroom is because of you. Mm-hmm. And I know you didn't pay me for this.
Wink.
But in our spirit to build community, which is the theme, and making sure that students belong in the classroom and that they feel comfortable, I think that you help make that magic happen.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the fact that you had to learn English to be where you are. I had to learn English to be where I am, and learn Portuguese to be able to communicate with my grandparents. Mm-hmm. When we ask students for questions or when we want students to participate, we do it from a place of love.
Yeah.
Because we really want to ensure that students are getting the most out of the experience.
Yeah.
Right. And, it's a language class. The goal is on oral proficiency, right? So how can we leverage the skills, the talents, the resources to make that happen for all of you?
I think you both do a really great job of kind of, like I said, one leading, and like you said, honestly, like leading with love and love in the classroom. Like I think there has to be a desire for knowledge. And a thing about college or the university level is that, I think there is an underlying expectation or implication that everyone chose to be here. Everyone is choosing to be here at this level. And that, I think, in high school, that is not necessarily the case. There is like almost a compulsory, I think there legally is a compulsory requirement for you to go to school, whereas like university, it's not like that. And I think that if there is like that mutual understanding between the student and the teacher that we're both here for a reason, that puts us on the same playing field to maybe take some of the emotion out of it, or like maybe some of the like insecurities that you might have in the classroom out of it. For me personally, this is a lot of this I'm speaking from my perspective, because I love learning. I have been, this is going to sound a little, I hope this doesn't sound like self-righteous or anything, but I love learning, and I've like been really good at learning for a really long time. And I've taken my academic skills like out of this state to another place and put it in action in a way that I'm like really, really proud of. And I want to keep doing that. And what's so interesting about like language is that it almost is a reset on that. Language acquisition is like, you're not starting in kindergarten because you have all of the things that you've learned up until the age that you're at, but you have to start at that level of, I can only tell you what I'm doing right now, this very moment. Like, estoy hablando, like we are talking, like that is only one tense that we have like learned. I've been telling all my friends this. I'm like, I can't tell you what I did last week or in the future, but I will next semester. So it's just interesting. Like you really, I think you get to, when I am at my age and I feel very confident in what I've learned and what I know. But that kind of starts over with Spanish or with another language acquisition, because you only know what you know at that point in time. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to be in this learning environment, and you both do a really great job of facilitating it. So this is a kudos and a thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, I feel like everybody should try to learn a new language. Everyone.
You think so?
I do think so.
I think so too.
Especially because
it's humbling.
It is.
Makes you vulnerable, makes you even more human.
Absolutely.
It does. And more than that, I feel like when you learn a new language, you develop a different soul, a different part of you. Because, and you mentioned this before we started recording, but when I speak in English, my thoughts, my expressions are different.
Yeah.
Because if I try to bring my Spanish, as we say, jerga, my Spanish slangs, it's not going to make sense in English. Yeah. It's not going to translate. All the expressions, the way that I will say, usually when somebody that comes to Tulsa, they're straight up from Tulsa, from South America or Latin America, and they're like, hey, how should I learn English? Like, what's the difficult part of it? Yeah. I always say it's difficult to learn the language, don't get me wrong. But the most difficult part, for me at least, and this is from my own personal experience, it's not like much learning the language, but learning how to say stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because the way that you express yourself in English is way different than Spanish. Mm-hmm. So you subconsciously develop another version of yourself. And because I'm not saying that when I speak in English, I'm just a different person. I'm still me.
Yeah.
But my expressions, my thoughts, the way that I choose my words are way different than Spanish. And that feel like that's an experience that you would only acquire if you learn a new language. Yeah. It's such an enriching experience.
Language is emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And feelings. Yeah.
I just realized I used that verb tense wrong earlier. So it's so funny that you like, I think for me, like even having the humility to be like, okay, I know I did something wrong. Whereas like in English, I also speak poor English all the time. But I think I get sometimes overcritical of like what I'm trying to say in a new language because you want to perfect it. But you don't start with perfection either. So it's a really interesting.
And the question is, do you ever achieve perfection?
Exactly. And I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I don't aspire to speak perfect English because in actuality, there's a lot of like weird, I guess just like social pressure or social expectation about like who speaks proper English, and if that's like an achievement that people have or whatever. Like I don't know. I'm gonna divert us to our questions again, because I do want to get to this part of the conversation. And this question is specifically for you, Miguel, and it's gonna sound a little bit like
Sounds intense.
I know. it's also kudos. So it seems to be for you a huge honor to be named by Oklahoma Magazine as a part of their 2024 40 Under 40. So congratulations on that.
That was my twin brother. Sorry to break it to you. That was not me.
Felicidades por tu distinción. We will link the article in the show notes for everyone to check out all the other 39 under 40. And from my perspective, a lot of your work seems to center around community, communication, and the facilitation of both through language acquisition and through language. And so if I were to ask you, which is
for $10,000, let me hear it.
And I don't know if you recognize that you in class, you love saying that. If I were to ask,
yes,
that is your lead into every question, and I loved it. What does community mean to you, and what would you say to people that are seeking it? I think for both, I'll just leave it at that. What would you say to people that are seeking community?
So let's start with the first question, which is the meaning of community. I think that community is the place where you belong. Right? So community is the place that you get to call home. Right? Community is that common place that brings everybody together. And when you think about the word community, comes from the word communa, comuna, and then the word unity, right? So bringing people together. I think that for me, that's what it is. I think that community also means engagement, in the sense that I think that in order for you to have your support system, have your friends, your family, your colleagues, you have to engage with them, right? And you have to create the space for that to happen. I also think that community is giving back. And that is, I know that my time is very limited right now, but every once in a while, I do try to give back to my community. I have done some volunteer work for Catholic Charities, for the immigration office. My passion is translating, right? And I want to facilitate that communication between, the city, certain organizations, and our immigrants. I think that bridging that language gap is key to ensure that people are successful, right? And I think that volunteering, like I mentioned, I think that helps you with community. And I think that community is what you get to call home, right? I think that Tulsa and the United States in general has been the place that has allowed me to pursue my dreams, the place that has allowed me the opportunity to grow personally, academically, professionally. So that's what it means, right? And what would I tell people seeking a community or trying to be a part of a community is just get out there, right? I think that connects to what I say. You have to volunteer, you have to get engaged, you have to get involved, because how do you know what other peoples are needing if you're not out there? How people know what you bring to the table if you do not allow yourself that opportunity. It requires you to be vulnerable. It requires you to be open and honest, right? And I think that those are key ingredients in fostering healthy relationships with others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I answer your question correctly?
It was perfect.
Do I get extra points?
Extra points, yes.
Okay, good.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head in so many ways. And I think that's probably what my definition of community is as well, is kind of like that place that you get to call home. And then I think you give and you get from community, but I think it starts with giving. Because you have to, I think that, like, and not to reiterate it, but there is a element of community that is like recognizing what you bring to the table in any situation. And I think that community is one of the first places you get to do that. And you most of the time do it for free. You do it out of the goodness of your own heart or what your personality or whatever in you calls in that moment to give to someone else. And then there's ways that you can, of course, like, I think elevate that or even like monetize that. But at the end of the day, what is your like basic instinct to give to someone else can be the basis of how you enter a community. And then your community can center around your identities. Oftentimes it does. And yeah, I think, I don't know. I think you did a really great job of answering.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Not to earn brownie points, but I think that part of building community is what you are doing, right? So with this type of programs, when I was thinking about the question and I said, well, you are an example of what community is. And I think that part of that building process is identifying the champions of the concept of community, and you're one of them.
I appreciate that. It's like been something that I have been seeking for so long. I think the last, I like ask this question probably like 2 to 3 times a week to different people because I'm like, what do you find in community or how do you approach community? And it is something that I have been looking for a really long time. I feel like I live my life, at least these past 12 years, in like a 4-year cycle. 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, and now I'm in my senior year of young adulting in Tulsa. And if I were to recognize those 3 like stages of my life, it's always that junior, senior year where I finally come into my own, where I finally feel like I've built relationships that are, rewarding me, and I'm bringing something to them as well. So
have you found community?
I think so. I think if you would have asked me that a couple months ago or maybe a year ago, I don't know if I would have confidently or as quickly said yes. But I think so, yes, because there's a queer community here for me. There's an academic community here for me. There's an intellectual community here for me. There's an entrepreneurial community here for me. I think now the challenge is, how do you give to all of those communities and be a part of them without, I have this like need to try and combine them because I want there to be like harmony and almost like the convenience of everyone being in the same place for me to be able to be like, I want everybody to see how amazing I am or something like that. Or so that because I know that there are great people in this community or great people in this community, like how can I be the facilitator? I just I keep putting myself in the middle instead of, and I guess I keep putting myself in the middle and not recognizing that as a gift, which is like an interesting thing that therapy has been really helpful with and everything. But yeah, I think I found it in the sense that I'm very confident in a lot of the relationships that I have right now, which is good and it feels great. All right, I'm pivoting over to you, Chris, or ping-ponging back to you. And I think this is going to take us down another very interesting conversation. So being trilingual for anyone is no small feat, and I think it really embodies the type of effort we should be making in a global society to be meeting people where they are in whatever way that we can. And so how do you foresee your language fluency serving you throughout your career and your relationships?
It helps, especially because I teach a language. So learning another language, because I learned Japanese at TCC. So it helped me put into that perspective how the student approaches a language,
Yeah.
And that helps me a lot nowadays working at TCC because I can relate a lot to students. I understand their frustration.
Yeah.
I understand that they want to speak faster, speak fluently. They take one semester of language and they already have this expectation of trying to speak at a native speed or understand movies. And I get it because I was also the same. I took a semester of Japanese and I was like, okay, let's start reading some magazines. But so yeah, that helps me a lot. Taking another language and then mastering it because I know the amount of time it takes because as I told you, I took it at TCC. So I remember I used to not only do the homework and do what this instructor said, but it was mostly of my own, listening, try to listen stuff in Japanese, try to read stuff in Japanese, immerse myself in the language. all of that really helped me to have a solid foundation of how should I approach to students nowadays. Give them recommendations. With a student comes and be like, hey, would you give any advice? And I'll be like, oh, I went through the same thing. Do this.
Yeah.
So it really helps. Knowing another language really helps, especially because I'm working in a field that relates to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way that I approach like crafting this question for you, and I really appreciate your response to it as well, is that it kind of goes back to that notion of like, you end up becoming a different person or crafting your concept of who you are differently in a different language because of all of these things in which we've been talking about. But I wonder what the third version of yourself feels like, or if it's like a is there
It's a mystery.
are you funnier in Japanese, or are you like more demure or whatever? Like it just, who's to say?
Right.
Who are you?
Not to get too existential, but it does
Who
break down
are
to
you?
that.
It does. Well, the problem yet is I haven't met that version of myself yet. I know the language and I speak it.
Yeah.
But the fact that I don't use it on a day-to-day basis, or I don't live in that country, is what not makes me, discover that version of myself.
Absolutely.
Because I don't use it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You develop that other soul of yours, that other personality of yours, by using the language on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
speaking it, hearing it. As you guys said, being in the community, interchanging thoughts, interchanging jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that part of myself is yet to be discovered. I'd love someday to go to Japan and be there, perhaps teaching Spanish or English.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be super cool. Yeah, I think God, I had a thought in it and it's escaped me because we've gone down so many wells. But I think I'm just the language is so important. And I remembered my thought. It took me a little bit. I have been trying to, you brought up a great point about like using the language as like a way to start to see yourself. Well, I've been telling everybody that'll listen to me that I'm learning Spanish and it has created opportunities for me to speak Spanish a lot more. Mm-hmm. My supervisor, Brooke, speaks Spanish. One of our goals by the end of the year is to have one of our one-on-ones in Spanish, which would be really exciting to kind of converge my professional life with my language acquisition life. And, it actually might take 2 years of Spanish to get there, but we're both working at it at like this in kind of the same pace. So we have that appetite for it. And then I've, discovered in my community seeking that there are Spanish speaking folks there. And we've been texting in Spanish, and it's nice. It's fun. Like right. We say silly things, and they forget Spanish some of their Spanish sometimes, and so I'm actually like, oh, it's this thing. Like, what's the word for schedule? It's
horario.
Horario, yeah. That word is sometimes like not which I guess this person's like Spanish background I'm not super familiar with, but that was a word that they forgot, and so they just put los schedules or something, and it just like makes opportunities for like silly things to come out that are so true to the personality that I already know, and so it's almost like I'm folding back in on my point of like, you're a different person in language, but sometimes you get to be the same person just with a different twist on it.
Yeah.
What would the Latin side of Evan look like? Will he be funnier in Spanish?
Oh, I'd agree. Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think, matter of fact, I'm more funnier in Spanish, and all my Latino listeners right now would agree that there has been a point of our lives where we're in a conversation. And then this joke comes out that works in Spanish but doesn't work in English, and we're like, "Oh!"
If I said it,
I'm like, if only everybody could understand me in Spanish right now, we'd all be laughing by now.
That's what my husband tells me, that I'm the funniest guy in Spanish, but then in English, my jokes don't link. So that's heartbreaking.
Well, and that's funny. I love that. Okay, so I think the last kind of direction I want to take our conversation in And then I'm actually going to turn it over to you guys for you to talk about anything you'd like to say. So I did last night before, and like prepping for this this episode. You had sent us a message in class like, this is the last day to do everything, and I was like, okay, let me go check my grade book and like see what everything is. And I was like, oh, I saw you left that comment on my cultural experience, and I was like, oh gosh, what if he rips me to shreds and then I'm gonna interview him tomorrow and be like, why did you say that? But the thing that you did say actually like really touched me, so I'm gonna read it. I'm impressed by the depth and creativity of your reflection on the Latin/Hispanic culture. Your participation and enthusiasm in exploring various aspects of this vibrant community contribute to our collective understanding and appreciation of this rich culture. Seeing how you have taken the initiative to learn and share something new is inspiring. Your work showcases your growing knowledge and your respect and curiosity for a culture that is a significant part of the American traditions. Your efforts are a testament to the importance of cultural exploration and understanding. So
you toured the entire Miami area, and you actually went to one of my favorite restaurants, Vitus.
Vitus?
Yes.
Really yummy.
It is really good.
Yes. What did I have again? The
La Milanesa.
La Milanesa. Oh my gosh. So good. I'm glad I was able to craft that into that story, because I just went on vacation and I was having an existential moment on that vacation, to be honest. It was the last time that I was there in Miami. I was like with my partner and like all of his friends and stuff. And so I guess my former partner. And, when you have like that moment in the same place under completely different circumstances, you look at I don't know, at least I started reminiscing, but also started to recognize and like appreciate like where I was. And then also how I was I was there in Miami, like with a different cultural framework than I had before. Like I actually had the ability to speak to people that predominantly the language in Miami is Spanish.
And that showed throughout your reflection.
I appreciate it. And so, yeah, it was like, in a way, I think I still have a little bit of a ways to go in terms of like shaking off some of the nerves of engaging in a conversation with someone after like knowing that they are a Spanish speaker and that I know some Spanish, but they wouldn't assume that about me unless I do something first. So it kind of puts the ball back in my court on like being the person that I want to be in many, many contexts, which is the person that has initiative to start the conversation and can put us on an equal playing field in conversing and in connecting. Because I don't know, I think that is something that I'm starting to assume as like a personal responsibility in this world, like how I navigate it. We need to, or I feel the need to, like walk this world with the ability to speak to communicate with people that I want to communicate with, regardless of what language it is. I know I'm not going to learn every language, and that's not my goal. But I'm starting with like a language that I know I will be able to speak to a lot more folks and my community here in Tulsa, and my future travels that I still hope to have, because I still haven't been out of this country, which is crazy. And I still need to do that.
Study abroad next year.
I know, I'm ready. But yeah, I don't know. I was a little bit of a share out to our audience, and also just to you guys, that like, I think for you, Miguel, specifically, I really appreciate like you seeing me in this space. I think the words that you said in this comment were thoughtful and really like on the nose for why I'm doing this. And I really, really appreciate that.
It shows, and it showed consistently throughout the class. And I think that is no secret. I think that you and your group and all my Spanish classes this semester and the previous semester, you all bring different gifts to this party. And I think that is what makes the environment so unique and the learning process so fascinating. And that is also why this is my hobby, because you guys make a difference, right? And you mentioned something that brought back a memory, and it goes back to our original question of the identity, the generations that keep their identities, some of them that lose them, or some of them that adjust to meet some other needs. one of the, and this is me being vulnerable here, one of the issues that I had when I first got here was the fact that I didn't want to speak as much English as I should because people will oftentimes make comments about my accent.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't until I ran into someone and I forgot who that someone was. And that person said something to me that really made a difference and allowed me to be me and allow me to be proud of my accent. And this person said, the fact that you have an accent, that means that you're trying to communicate in another language to reach out to more people.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that for those people out there who are considering learning a language, or for all of us who at times is like, did I say this correctly, or did I mispronounce this? Or in your case, you're trying to connect with more folks. I think that is something to keep in mind. We will not be perfect because I don't think that we will reach that state, right?
Yeah.
But the goal is to ensure that we connect and that we make meaningful connections there with other folks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think just to dive down a tiny bit for our English speakers out there, and that's your first language, don't comment on someone's accent. I have heard so many of my very close friends have whose language English isn't their first language say that it's not an insecurity, but it is like you get this ick feeling when someone says, "Oh, you speak English so well." Like it's almost like I didn't expect you to be, this type of way or whatever. And I don't know, it's just a weird comment that shouldn't mean, or I hope that it doesn't detract from anyone, where anyone's coming from. But it's just an unnecessary one. So,
and to looking at the other side of the coin, Evan, and for my Latino, Hispanic, Latinx peeps out there, I have had situations in which I run into native Spanish speakers for the first time, and their comment to me is like, "Your Spanish is so beautiful. Where did you learn it?" Or people who would say, "Your Spanish is right on target. You don't make any mistakes when you speak Spanish." So some people, because I may not look like them, right? They assume that I'm not a Spanish speaker. That Spanish is not my first language.
That's where it's coming. It's coming from a presumption that it's not your first language.
It is not my first language, right? And, we have to be mindful that as we evolve and learn more languages, our accents are going to change, right? Yeah. And it becomes that melting pot.
Absolutely.
So,
well, we've definitely gone down a variety of topics. I've really, really enjoyed every direction we've taken this conversation in. I think it is really reflective of how expansive language is. I think it can really affect who we conceive ourselves as and how we can navigate this world. It has sociological implications. It has, political implications of knowing all of these things. And so I think we've done a little bit about all of that. I'd love to turn this back over to you guys. If there's anything that you want to talk about either in your personal lives, in your communities, a cause, an event, a story, anything. I kind of prepared you for this, but not necessarily.
Think.
Now you're actually playing.
I don't know. Nothing comes to me.
You can also address the audience in Spanish. I know we've had primarily this conversation in English, but if there's anything that would be, funnier in Spanish.
This is your time to tell us that joke.
Exactly.
You couldn't tell in English.
Or more eloquent in Spanish. I as a student, will want to see if I can pick up what you're saying.
Oh, well, give me a minute. I got nothing really coming to me.
No, you're so fine.
¿Puedes repetir la pregunta, por favor?
A topic, a cause, an event, a story in which you want to share with our audience on this platform. It can be anything.
More than a story or a cause, I really would like to continue encouraging Tulsans and those who are considering moving to Tulsa to make this their home, right? I have been very fortunate and very blessed to be where I am today because this community opened its doors to me. And it is a place that wherever I land, right? Because one thing that I know for sure is that when I retire, I will not be here. I think that when I retire, I will go back to my Portuguese roots and reconnect with that side of me. But this place has so many opportunities, is so wonderful, and it has so many amazing people who are making a difference. So that is just my invitation to consider learning another language or to travel, to explore the world and have the opportunity to see things from a different lens.
Yes, and piggyback what Prof just said, it definitely, I'd encourage listeners to learn a new language, to just explore that side of yourself. As Prof said, learning a new language really brings another side of you, another persona. And I feel like that's something very beautiful. Go ahead. It is something very beautiful for you to discover that part of yourself. So I'd encourage all of you guys to learn a new language, most definitely. And more than anything, have fun, because it's very fun to learn a new language. I can see, like what Prof said earlier, the class is fun because you make it that way. You all make it that way. We wouldn't be as happy to come into a classroom knowing that we're just expecting 20 angry faces.
Yeah.
Right? Like when we go to the classroom and we see you guys actually trying and coming up with new questions and being like, wait, why do we say it like this? But in English we say it like this. Mm-hmm. And all of that really brings that passion of us of trying to make you guys learn the language.
Yeah.
So it's learning a new language is fun. Would you agree?
I would agree. I've had a blast.
Right. So that's what I want to wrap up with.
It allowed me to find my husband.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for your time. Gracias por tu tiempo. I'm really honored to have had the opportunity to have this conversation with you and to share it with folks. I hope something resonates for our listeners out there. And if anyone wanted to connect with you or take your class, where can they find you out in the world?
They can find me at Tulsa Community College. I will be happy to share my email address with you. Maybe you can add it to the video, or when you share that link to the 40 under 40, you may, if you can, connect
Absolutely.
that. But I'm at the Southeast campus, but I always tell my students I am where my students and where my peeps are. So although I'm housed at the Southeast, I do share my gifts and my talents with all the campuses. But you can find me online. I'm not on social media, sorry. But also, if you need to get a hold of me, you can ask Evan, and Evan will relay it.
Exactly. I would be happy to.
Same here. I'm located at Southeast campus. If you see Profe, you'll see me.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again, and thank you for listening to this episode of Grow With Us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Grow With Us. Grow With Us is supported by In-Tulsa Initiatives. If you're interested in learning more about In-Tulsa services for job placement and workforce development, please visit talent.intulsa.com. From there, you can join our talent network where you'll get access to our newsletter, and our talent team will make sure we put the right opportunities on your radar. We put the choice to pursue a new career and opportunities in your hands. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to be notified when more episodes of Grow With Us are released. Let us know what you think about how we're doing by rating and reviewing. It really helps. Grow With Us is edited and engineered by Rant9 Productions and Jesse Ulrich. This has been Grow With Us.